Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's episode of the Get Your Juicy Back Show. Today, we're going to be talking about one of my very favorite topics, your ideal cuisine, which is the most intelligent, satisfying, and personalized way to eat. For those of you that are tuning in for the first time, let me introduce myself briefly. My name is Susan Joyce Proctor, and I am the founder and CEO of Get Your Juicy Back, which is a women's wellness company. And I'm really delighted to be here, show host here on the Win-Win Women Network, to be sharing all of this amazing information with you. So I'm going to make my usual disclaimer that I want to make it clear that I'm not going to be offering any medical information here on this show, on this episode or any other episodes. We're always going to be talking about education and self-care. But I'm not a doctor. And so legally and ethically, I need to tell you that we're not offering any medical information, but we will be offering a tremendous amount of valuable stuff for you for your own self-care. And on that note, what I want to mention is that of the information, the material that I'm going to be sharing with you on this episode and all the others, going to be in three different categories. Some of it is information, and the information you can Google. In fact, on today's episode, you might want to have a pen and paper handy, because I have a few things that I think you might want to look up or take down. So information is something that you can Google that's out there that I'm happy to kind of guide you to check out if you're interested. The second category are perspectives that you might not have come across before from Ayurvedic medicine or a holistic perspective that may be different from what you hear in the mainstream. And so I'll be mentioning some things like that. And then I have some very strong opinions of my own that I'll be sharing with you, but I want to make it clear that these are all opinions and that you can take or leave them as you like, because I want to be fair, free to share that with you without imposing anything on anybody. So we're going to start, as I promised, every week, we're going to start with a centering breath. So just to get present, I'll invite you, if you like, to close your eyes and just join me on taking a really nice, deep inhalation, breathing in energy and light and life force, coming together virtually in this group, in this community, and then exhaling out anything that you don't need right now. And I always like to have an intention for each of our episodes that we get the maximum benefit and value out of being together. So thank you for joining me in all of that. Okay, let's dive in to this topic for today of the ideal cuisine and why is it so important? Well, it's January, so people are still thinking about, if not New Year's resolutions, then at least the themes that we've been talking about of some new and better choices. And of course, as I said before, today's the first day of the rest of your life, so it's always a good time to be making new and better choices. But January in our world is kind of a time that people are particularly looking to do that. And so the context that I have been sharing lots of material over the past couple of months with you is that I have a very basic wellness model that recognizes the intelligence of the body and indicates to us that we ideally can be making choices to do more good stuff for the body and less bad stuff, which allows it to do its, magnificent magical healing work and regeneration. So of the good stuff that I keep referring to is nutrition, sleep, movement, and self-care. And we've talked about some of those topics already. And on the other side of the things that we would like to do less of because they challenge our immune system and our ability to function well are stress, toxicity, inflammation, and excess. So in today's conversation about nutrition, that's where that kind of fits into all of this. And if I had to pick one of those areas, I would probably say that nutrition is the most important because We eat every single day. Those of us that are lucky enough to live in the world that we live in, we get to eat every single day. And so we're making choices that are either serving us or not serving us every single day. And that's why I think that's one of the reasons that I think getting our relationship with food down is so important. And the other is that our relationship with food is one of the primary relationships that we have in our lives. So if that one's not working so well, it's kind of not such a good foundation for other relationships in our lives. And I've experienced for myself, and I've seen this with so many clients, that when we get our relationship with food to a place that it's serving us, there's so many other aspects of our lives that also kind of fall into place. So to me, it's a really important and basic place to start. And I'm going to actually offer you a little bit of a quote of what I mean about ideal cuisine. And the person I'm actually quoting is me, because I came up with this concept and this is how I define it. And this is what I say. There is no one right way for everyone to eat all the time, but there is an ideal cuisine for each of us that is in alignment with the highest intelligence of our body, mind, and spirit. And that's the vision and the possibility that I have for all of us that I kind of designed for myself about 20 years ago. All of this wellness wisdom that I've acquired was for me initially, because I wanted to find the right way to live in this world and in this body. And the stuff that I discovered turned out to be so incredibly valuable that I just had to find a way to share it. So this is what I designed for myself. So let's start with this idea that it's January right now, and for whenever you may be listening to this, it's always a good time to be paying attention to the idea of eating healthy. So I'm going to ask you a question on the topic of eating healthy. Do you know what that means? Do you know what eating healthy looks like? And just going to give you a sec to even think about that, because I will confess that for much of my life, I had no idea what it was like to eat healthy, partly because I wasn't really paying attention to that for a good part of my life. But another aspect was that a lot of what we were told about eating healthy turned out not to be true. There is some remarkably bad science out there. And so some of what I want to share today is what I have come to research and understand about the new nutritional wisdom that reflects the way the body really works. Because I can remember, and probably most of you can too, we grew up, the government had this thing called the food pyramid that showed us, the foundation of what we ideally should be eating. And then, at the top, the things that we shouldn't have that much of. And it's been updated a number of times over the years. But I would say I really don't agree with any of it. And I'll tell you a little bit about why. Years ago, we were being told that, dairy products were an important component, an important food group for everyone. There's a lot of reasons for us to know that dairy isn't good these days for most people. We were told for many, many years that whole grains, should be the foundation of the way that we eat. I think at some point that 10 or 11 servings were recommended each day. And here is my opinion. It's a perspective, but it's a very strong opinion. I really disagree with that. And for reasons that I'll be describing, I don't think grains are a very good choice these days at all. They're something that has a place in our cuisine, but certainly not something to be emphasized. They are not very nutrient dense. And they have some other effects that I'll be describing when I talk about the glycemic index that are really not in the direction of what we want to be feeding ourselves with. So I'm going to suggest that the food pyramid that we grew up on is a very, very poor guide for what it is to eat healthy. And one of the other things that sticks in my mind, and this really is a pet peeve, is for many, many years in our culture, there was this idea that healthy meant low fat. And actually, I would say it's quite the opposite. In fact, I saw a meme. I have a little graphic somewhere that says, when you see the word low fat, think chemical shitstorm. And in fact, that's unfortunately pretty much true. Uh, and this is one of the myths in our culture that I think has been among the most absolutely harmful when it comes to nutrition, is this idea of low fat. And in fact, I would say, especially for women and for women over 50, which is our audience here, we really need healthy fats. A lot of the whole idea behind getting your juicy back actually is about hydration and oleation, that we really need water and fat to lubricate ourselves. And I think a lot of the aging that women experience is premature, and we dry out because we don't have enough hydration and we haven't had enough fat. So those are two places to start when we're trying to think about what healthy is not. It's not what we've been told by the food pyramid, and it's definitely not low fat. So let's kind of talk about what is healthy. And I'm going to start with what I think of as the universal principles that are healthy for everyone. And then I'm going to be talking about the ways that we can kind of customize our cuisine for ourselves. So the place that I start in thinking about what to eat that's healthy is that ideally what we want to be eating is food with a capital F as compared to food with a small f. And I'll tell you what I mean by that. Food with a capital F that's really food, that is designed to nourish us, comes from a farm. Food with a small f that's highly processed comes from a factory. So that's kind of easy. If it comes from a factory and it's in a box and it's highly processed, it has much, much less to offer us. And in fact, there's a lot of reasons to know that a lot of the health problems that we have in our world come from the fact that people are eating very, very processed foods with unhealthy fats and lots of excess sugar. So we want to start with food that's actually food. And when I think of that, I think about, the years that I traveled in Europe through, France and Italy, where they ate amazing, delicious things that were actually food. There's nothing processed. And, that experience that Americans have of, going to Europe and eating a lot and coming back and being thinner, that there's something very, very different when we eat actual food. So that's the most important thing, is that it be food. Should be obvious, but unfortunately, it often is not. The other qualities that we would want to be seeking out there is that it be fresh, for all obvious reasons. Foods have more nutrients when they're fresh, and they have more life force. And those are two of the really exciting things that we ideally are seeking from food, is nutrition and life force. Physical nutrients, and then the energy that we get, from the sun and from nature indirectly from food, which is again why it needs to be food and not processed stuff where there's really very little life force left. And I mentioned the term of nutrient density, that ideally we want to be eating foods that have a very high proportion of nutrients for their mass and for their the amount that we're eating. And I would say that the most nutrient dense food group is vegetables. And one of the things I'm really grateful for is I adore vegetables. I've been quoted saying that life is one long opportunity to eat vegetables, and that's not far from the truth for me. The other aspect of eating healthy that I find to be really, really important, that I think many people do not grasp, and that is has to do with the glycemic index. So I want to just explain that for a few minutes in case this is a new concept or something that you're not fully familiar with. I want to talk about what the glycemic index is. So, in an earlier episode, I shared a lot about my relationship with food and historically how dysfunctional it was, and that I struggled with my weight for many years, and that I really didn't know what I was doing. So what I'm talking, to you about now represents a complete departure from where I started. And, for many years, I was counting calories because we were told that, that was what we needed to do to eat healthy. And then for years, I was counting fat grams because I didn't know at that time how untrue that was. Now I don't count anything. But if I'm monitoring anything, or if I have some, kind of conceptual way of measuring some of the components of food that are helpful and not helpful. The one that I think deserves the most attention these days is the glycemic index. So let me just explain briefly what that is. When we eat food, the body has to process it. And as we know, we have this amazing, miraculous body and a digestive system. And when we eat foods that have sugar and carbohydrates in them, the body breaks those down. And in order to process those, we need this wonderful hormone called insulin to process the sugar. Insulin is a tricky hormone because one of the things that it does is it tells the body to store energy as fat. And much of the time, that's not what we want. So the glycemic index actually measures how much sugar a food breaks down to, and how quickly, and how much insulin is demanded of the body to process and digest that food. And I'm going to suggest that a healthy goal is to eat foods that have as low a glycemic index as possible, because this insulin thing not only contributes to weight gain, which is a negative health factor just in its own to be carrying excess body fat, but it also contributes to the potential for diabetes, which is a very serious disease, and a whole syndrome called diabesity that in the Western world is rampant and really responsible for many, many health problems. In fact, there's a lot of research that the current health crisis is mostly impacting people who have these underlying conditions. So you can draw your own conclusions from that. So when, again, just summing up a little bit here, when I'm thinking about healthy for everyone, these are the principles that I think of for my cuisine, for everybody's cuisine, is that we be eating food that's fresh, unprocessed, ideally organic, because that has more nutrients and less toxicity. Obviously, foods that are not genetically modified are obviously way preferable to foods that have been, and that they be nutrient dense and have a low glycemic index. Those are the principles that I think of universally for everybody as what we want to be doing to eat healthy. But in my model of the world, one size doesn't fit anybody. Not only doesn't one size fit all, it doesn't fit anybody. And the program and the approach that I have is very much specific to each person's blood type and their Ayurvedic constitutional type. So we've been talking about some of that, and we're going to be going into that in much more detail in future episodes. But what I want to say about the blood type, in case this is information that you don't yet have, is that each blood type has a handful of foods that it's very sensitive to, that have problem proteins that contribute directly to inflammation and also that mimic insulin. So this is information that I learned from Dr. Peter D'Adamo, who wrote the books, Eat Right for Your Type. I studied with him, I'm certified by him, and I work with individuals to identify the handful of foods that muck up their system. And I can tell you that for me, I have a fairly rare blood type. I'm a B blood type. The most toxic food in the world, surprisingly, is chicken. And 20 years ago, when I stopped eating that, my hormones balanced out. I dropped all kinds of body fat, and I have literally never eaten it again. So for different people, it's different based on their blood type. But as you're exploring, developing your own ideal cuisine, you'd want to have that information and recognize that there are some foods that, even if they may be healthy for somebody else, they're not necessarily good for you. So that's another factor that I, kind of would build into this whole concept of ideal cuisine. The other is that it balances your Ayurvedic type. And again, that gets a little bit more complex. We'll be talking about that a lot, but kind of simply, some people are more warm and some are more cold. Cold people would do really well to enhance their digestion with warming herbs and spices, and warm people would do well to balance themselves by not having hot and spicy food. That's one example. Some of us do better with food that's grounding because we have nervous systems that are a little bit more high strung, and other people do better with lighter foods to kind of balance out their system. Also, some people are more damp, some people are more dry. So in Ayurveda, we pay attention to these qualities of the energies of food to balance ourselves. And that's something else that I help individuals with very specifically. We also, from an Ayurvedic perspective, want to choose foods and a style of eating, a cuisine that's a good fit for our digestive system. That concept is pretty much missing completely in Western nutrition. But as an example, and I know this is a bit controversial, but I do need to say it, there's a lot of belief in the area where I live that eating raw is the healthiest way to eat. And while I do recognize that there's nutrients and energy in raw foods that we lose when we cook our foods, it's also the case that from an Ayurvedic perspective, many people don't have sufficient digestive fire to be able to digest raw foods very well. And Ayurveda generally does favor cooked foods for everyone. Most of the time. But again, you're very individual. And my goal for everyone is to really learn how to surrender to what is right for their bodies. Most of us have been told a lot of stuff that our minds have processed, and a lot of it, as I was saying earlier, wasn't really the full truth. I'm holding, space here for us all to surrender to the intelligence of our bodies. And one of the beautiful things about designing and eating your ideal cuisine is that it brings you into balance with your body, mind, intelligence that helps inform you about exactly what it is you need to do, which to me was really the excitement here, because it got off the struggle and deprivation to come into this alignment. And that was really exciting to me over time. Another aspect, and this is really important, is the way that you eat ideally needs to align with your values. That's another one. I know a lot of people who believe that eating a vegan diet is the only healthy way to eat. Again, I don't agree with that, because I don't think there's any one way that is the right way for everyone. And from my perspective, there's nutritional imbalances that can occur for at least some people by limiting themselves exclusively to plant-based foods. But I do completely respect people's values in making that choice. And I help them find the right foods to satisfy their blood type and their Ayurvedic type that are consistent with their values. Because there are some people for whom just vibrationally, it's completely inappropriate to eat meat. And I never tell anybody what to do. I do, enjoy being able to explain some of these principles. And some of the most important aspects of your ideal cuisine are making choices that fit your lifestyle and also that you like and love. So as I've been sharing for a number of episodes, I really recommend that we all consider creating a very personalized lifestyle for ourselves of healthy pleasures, where we find the things that we like that are good for us, and then live there. And that takes like all of the struggle away, because then we don't have to be in conflict between what we think is good for us and what we think we should do and what we really want to do. We come into kind of more wholeness and have some more distinctions about making the right choices. So just to sum up a little bit about how you might be thinking of designing your ideal cuisine, if you're interested in doing that, if any of these things that I'm talking about today speak to you. What I recommend is to start with those universal recommendations that I mentioned earlier about, eating food, real food. That's always, the starting point. To do a little research or, consult with me about identifying the foods that are problematic for your blood type and others that are supportive. Similarly, with your Ayurvedic constitutional type, there's so much we can do to kind of refine the choices that we make to our digestion and our lifestyle. It's actually really exciting. And then I have this other step of, putting together the food quadrants, of identifying the things that you like that are good for you, that you build your life around, and identifying the things that maybe aren't as good for you, that you can make some intelligent choices about. Because that's one thing that I do want to say, and those of you that know me know that this is true. I love having my ideal cuisine. as I said, I created this years ago. And I can remember, when I first did, um, eating my quadrant one foods and lying in bed at night, and I could feel, the food turning to energy in my body. And I was remembering, in the past when I didn't know these things and ate stuff that wasn't as aligned with my intelligence, and just feeling the food just sitting in my stomach, undigested for hours. We probably all had that experience. It's really exciting to eat, the way that is in alignment with our intelligence. But one of the principles that I also believe in is the 80-20 rule, which means we don't need to be perfect. The 80-20 rule, if you've never heard of it, basically says that in life, we get like 80% of our results from 20% of our actions. They talk about that in business, that, you get 80% of your business from 20% of your clients. But I think the 80-20 rule is just a good rule of thumb, just about about anything. So I love having my ideal cuisine. I know exactly what's right for me and not right for me. And I feel really very free to play with that. I don't follow it 100%. I mean, those of you who know me know that, because life is too short to deprive ourselves. So one of the beautiful things about knowing your ideal cuisine is you know exactly what you can get away with. And as somebody who's very pleasure seeking, that has a great benefit to me. So I hope that what I shared with you today is kind of a good reminder about some things that you probably already knew. I'm guessing that there was some new perspectives in there that you might not have come across before. And one of the other things I want to just mention before we wrap up, because this was really big, and I want to cite one of my mentors as well, but one of the nutritional wisdom updates that took place in a very big way in the last 10 years has been about fat. And Dr. Mark Hyman is my mentor in this area. He's an amazing functional medical doctor, heads up the Cleveland Clinic, and he's done written books and a whole symposium. That's one of the biggest pieces of update and change, is that healthy fats are really good for us and very, very important. And the healthy fats are the omega-3s primarily of olive oil and avocado products, coconut, nuts, oily fish. And the fats that are really harmful for us, unfortunately, are the vegetable oils that we were told to be eating for many, many years. Obviously, margarine and sunflower oil and safflower oil and canola, which is an abomination. And I just do not understand how it became part of the conversation about healthy food. It doesn't belong there at all. So I'm going to wrap up today by just letting you know again that you can always find me at getyourjuicyback.com and getyourjuicyback@gmail.com. And that I'm going to be introducing a program later this month that is my 22 tune-up, where we're going to be a 6-week program. We're going to be going into all of this stuff in a lot of personal detail. So if you're interested in diving in and getting your own answers, I have a wonderful program coming up where I'll be working with a group to do all of this together. And I've also made the decision to open up a few slots on my calendar to work with some individuals, because I haven't done that in a while. I've been working mostly with groups and putting this show together, but I was feeling that there would be some individuals that wanted to meet with me personally. So I have a special 2022 offering for that. So please reach out if you're interested in hearing about that. And I really wish you all the best for the new year. I'm excited about tweaking my own ideal cuisine, because as I've shared, I've gotten a little sloppy over the past couple of years, and I'm looking to kind of come into more alignment for myself, and to be following through on all of the other juicy things that we've talked about today, and the other stuff that I am looking forward to sharing with all of you. So thank you for joining me today. I hope to see you back next week. Bye for now.